Ooh.
Welcome to the Mental Health Boot Camp podcast, everybody.
Yay.
We are 3 Canadians and 1 American, all of us psychotherapists serving you cutting edge mental health knowledge. I am Ryan Howes, a clinical psychologist from Pasadena, California.
And I'm Brooke Lewis from Vancouver, Canada.
And Chris Boyd, also for Vancouver, Canada.
And finally, I am Joanna Boyd from Vancouver, Canada, and younger sister to Chris.
That is right. That is right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the middle of October. I can see that the leaves are changing in Vancouver, Chris. Anyone watching on YouTube will see that Chris has a nice backdrop of changing leaves. It's lovely.
Changes are coming slowly.
They are. Yeah, it's a late foliage season up here.
Well, here today it was 100 degrees. So we're not even into the whole fall thing yet.
Jeez.
Wow.
Fall for us is a week that happens sometime in the middle of November, and then we just kind of start up summer again.
Yeah, it lasts for 36 hours and it's over.
That's about right. Yeah.
So it was about 53 degrees up here today.
Oh, wow.
That was our high.
Mm-hmm. It's getting colder.
53. So
Yeah.
that's sweaters, that's jackets, that's wool socks,
Toques.
lots of toques.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, my goodness.
Yeah.
I gotta say,
Crazy.
yeah, I've really appreciated learning more about Canadian culture from you guys. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, by the way.
Oh, yeah. It was Turkey Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was lovely.
We actually had a listener reach out and compliment Joanna on her turkey call. So maybe, just maybe, we should do it again. What do you think, Joe?
There you go.
Well done.
I'll avoid the high pitched
Oh, that was the best part, though.
No. What?
There you go.
Yeah, Thanksgiving was great. We had an outside gathering under my other sister's patio. It was a little windy and cold. It was like the day autumn hit. Everyone was in their little bubbles and different tables. It worked out really well.
I'm wondering if the cuisine that's served is any different than what we do. So we got your turkey, you got your stuffing, some mashed potatoes, some gravy, maybe some cranberries or cranberry sauce, varieties of green beans and things like that. You guys have the same stuff, or you mix it up?
Essentially,
Yeah.
just a variety of side vegetables, maybe corn, carrots, or broccoli of some kind.
Brussels sprouts. Or
Brussels sprouts, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
And then yams for myself, and Joanna is a yam fan too. Or sweet potatoes. You guys call them sweet potatoes. We call them yams.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Some people will have the yam casseroles, or we just had Brooke made some roast yams, so it's good.
Wow. That sounds wonderful. I wish I could join you for that. Ours is more than a month away. I'm already hungry for it.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
wild.
We also, my mom coordinated a little game where we had to create something with Play-Doh. And so Joanna ended up creating my head, actually. Some sporadic chin hairs and very round. It was actually pretty dead on. I'm not going to lie.
It was really well done.
It was pretty well done, yeah. I made a pumpkin pie, which
A galette.
a galette. Yeah, it didn't look very good after seeing what I think Joanne's boyfriend Jesse created a hug, like a little guy, his hands out, a little heart.
Oh, nice.
I think he won the Thanksgiving Play-Doh art contest, but
All right. So it was a bit of a competition there, just kind of seeing who can create the most creative Play-Doh feature. That's good.
I think it's something to do with
cute.
Thanksgiving. Yeah.
I mean, Yeah, that's wonderful. Way to go,
Yeah,
guys.
and you weren't allowed to make a pumpkin. That was the rule. Nobody was allowed to make a pumpkin, but it had to be Thanksgiving related.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Again, wish I could have been there. Sounds like a blast.
Wish you could have been here too.
Was it Sunday or Monday?
The holidays on Monday.
But we tend
Okay.
to all have dinners on Sunday.
Oh, okay. And then just take Monday off?
There's like a
is it a
mix.
holiday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Well, great. And I guess if there's nothing else going on, maybe we can get into our topic. Got kind of an interesting one here today.
Let's do it.
Ooh.
Okay. This is the ambush where three of us don't know what the topic is and one of us do. And today, that one of us is me. I know what the topic is.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes, exactly. Okay, let's see. I think this might be interesting. This is actually not a topic, not a topic that I came up with. This was something that was suggested to me from someone. Someone sent me a text message with this.
Was it Joanna?
It was not Joanna, but let's see where this goes. Okay, I'm just going to read it out. There are a few parts to it. I'll read it out all at once at first. Okay, you ready? Drum roll. Turkey gobble. All right, here we go. My friends often tell me I am being too sensitive, but I don't know what I can do about that. I feel what I feel. Wouldn't denying my feelings be fake or cause me to become callous? How much sensitivity is a problem, and how can I find a sweet spot between sensitive and callous?
Nice.
Okay. Yeah.
This is like a Dear Abby
A
situation.
little bit.
It does seem a little Dear Abby,
Yeah.
but that's great. I love everyone.
No,
Please
this is-
send us your
good.
questions. info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
I think it's great stuff. Love having this.
I think it's our best ambush
It
yet. My
is.
goodness.
Well, we haven't started to answer it yet, so that will be the
Oh,
real test. Let's see if we actually have an answer for this person, okay? So, my friends often tell me I'm being too sensitive, but I don't know what I can do about it. I feel what I feel. So, wouldn't denying my feelings be fake or cause me to become callous? So I guess we have to, like we usually do, we kind of have to define our terms a little bit here. So what do you think we're talking about when we're talking about sensitivity in this fashion?
Sounds like she's having reactions to situations or things that other people are saying or doing. But there's so many questions because I'm wanting context in terms of what they're saying she's being overly sensitive to.
Mhm.
Because is it jokes or you're being too sensitive? Is it certain things about her? Or there's so many more questions and wonders.
I can imagine a few of these answers, but I don't have all the specifics. But yeah, I think it's about just having a big emotional reaction to things. Like, oh, something happens to a sports team or a character on TV and crying over that, right? Like, oh, you're so sensitive.
Yeah.
Or someone making a small observation that is perceived maybe as a criticism. Like, oh gosh, you're so sensitive, right? Like I'm just saying that I think you have, that I like your hat. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have cut your hair. There's the sensitivity that comes along with just everyday interactions and someone having an emotional reaction to that other people perceive as being a little too much or a little extra.
So it could be a range of different emotions then, eh? Like happiness and excitement or sadness or shock or anger. Like it could be kind of a roller coaster of different feelings and emotions in those moments, depending on the situation.
Could be, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or shame or insecurities.
Yeah, because I'm also hearing it in different ways. Same with you guys. I'm hearing, like, is it that the emotions are kind of right at the surface where in the moment, like there's nothing much behind it. It's just a pure emotion in the moment and it's felt really strongly versus Is it like an emotional reaction to something where then there's history behind that? So if you're looking at criticism or shame, embarrassment, guilt, betrayal, perhaps something like that, abandonment, there might be previous life experiences that are making that emotional expression more intensified, versus, oh, I saw a sentimental commercial and I teared up.
Mhm.
Right.
Sure, people are going to tear up at sentimental commercials once in a while.
Some people more than others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And,
but I see what you're saying there, Brooke, because a term or the phrase I often say in therapy is, if your emotional reaction doesn't fit the situation, it might be feeling memories or body memories or something more to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stemming from the past.
Mm.
But that seems a little different from someone who maybe lives life very vividly and maybe a little more emotionally sensitive or reactive in other situations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of course, a lot of reasons why we feel the way that we do, and of course, there's a biological component, but it's also a genetic component and experiences. Because a lot that kind of goes into it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, I
So
think
also, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's an important point, Chris, that certainly it's nature and nurture, right? There are infants who are, you can tell that they're more sensitive in their first week of life. They're just more reactive to touch, to light, to heat, to warmth, to all of everything. Their senses are actually more reactive to things than others. And so you could say, yeah, there's a biological component there, but then also our life experience. Sure, the experience that you have, a trauma that you experienced, or a belief that you have, or different things that were modeled for you, could all also go into this sensitivity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, very curious then, as Brooke mentioned, what kind of emotions are showing up, right? Because if there's aggression or taking things very personally, or then yeah, maybe there's something there that needs to be sorted out and explored.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, if it's maybe when you watch a movie, like I have a friend, she apparently watched a Eurovision of all movies, and she there's a couple moments where she welled up and cried a bit, right? I
It's a
think she
touching movie.
also is obviously there's also moments where she's super happy, and sometimes she experiences things very vividly, right? Which I think is fantastic, right?
But does that make you sensitive, right? So I'm just going to define real quick primary emotion. So when we talk about emotion, there's actually primary emotion and secondary emotion. So primary emotion is our visceral sense, is our physical sense of the emotion. Every emotion that we have is paired with physical sensation. So in our body, if we feel, let's say, anxious, our heart races, our blood changes, our breathing changes, we might feel things in our stomach or tension. So there is a visceral physical sense to the emotion, and every single emotion has that. So primary emotion is actually the physical felt sense of it.
And let me just add to that it can differ from person to person, right? Your experience of anxiety could be very different from mine, different from
Yeah.
Joe's, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. So the symptoms that, or the signals that I just gave, can be similar across people. I feel like sometimes those can be common ones, but they can be different. Absolutely. Yeah. Secondary emotion is the name we put to those sensations. So it's the language we put to them. So in our brain, the right side of our brain is where our emotion system is, and it's connected to another part of our brain, which runs right down into our body. And so that system operates, but it's nonverbal. So primary emotion is actually nonverbal. Secondary emotion is when we put a name to it and try and make sense of it, put a meaning behind it, right? So when we're talking about emotional sensitivity, are we talking that, I would assume that we're talking that the person's physical sense is stronger. Their felt sense of an emotion is more intensified or stronger, or yeah, maybe harder to contain.
Yes, I think that's a bit of what this person's talking about, and I think this kind of overlaps into other areas that maybe other podcasts in the future, like resilience and someone becoming better able to contain that. I mean, we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute here, but yes, the sensitivity. I also want to point out the fact that sensitivity oftentimes is used as kind of as a negative from people. Like,
I
oh, you're
was
so
just gonna talk,
sensitive.
yeah.
Oh, you want to say
Mhm.
something about it, Joe?
No, I just think that you're spot on. I was thinking the same thing. I think a lot of people, it is used more negatively, and people are made to feel bad for being sensitive or having a response that someone might see as maybe not called for or overly emotional for the situation.
Especially for dudes, for guys, right? There's a social cultural component where guys are not supposed to show emotions and feelings. It's supposed to be tough, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I want to add to that as well that there's, just to complicate things a little bit further, there's the sensitivity of being sensitive to others' emotions, and then the
Mhm.
sensitivity to your own, right? And as I talk with clients sometimes about sensitivity, I mentioned the fact that as a psychologist, it's actually really important that I'm sensitive, right? I need to have that. I need to hone that and use my sensitivity to other people's emotions to be able to read things and perceive and have empathy. It's a really important part of my job, really. If I were completely insensitive, then I don't think I'd be able to connect with people as well.
True.
And as well, I need to be able to read my own emotions and be sensitive to that as well, because that's some of what I use in my practice working with people is, oh, what does this make me feel? You know, how would I feel in this situation? Or, oh, you're telling a story and I'm feeling upset about this and you seem to be fine. What's that difference about? So sensitivity is actually a very constructive and useful thing when it's in the right context. I think
Definitely.
this person who wrote in is saying, well, it seems like other people are telling me I shouldn't be this sensitive, and then the question is asking, like, you know, is it just an on off switch? Like, if I wasn't so sensitive, would I then be callous, which would be this other end of a spectrum there of kind of heartless and not being able to feel
Yeah.
anything.
You know, it's tough, isn't it? Because you want to be authentic and genuine, and you want to embrace that vulnerability sometimes and show and that sensitivity. And I think that can make you relatable. And I think there's a lot of research to back that. But you know, I actually heard this from a client this week about sometimes he gets emotional when he's talking about certain things, and sometimes people listening get a little more reactive to it, right? And we had to explore the situation where, you know, it seemed like it was more about the other person than it was about him. I think the other person was very uncomfortable with feelings and emotions, and he reacted and tried to make fun of it or point it out, right? So the other side of this is, you know, it's other people's perception of the sensitivity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And their own comfortability with it.
And their comfort with it, which is a whole nother element to this as well, right?
Yes. Yes. Right. And that's could be could be their judgment, right? Like maybe they don't feel so comfortable with emotion, and so you know, you expressing emotion, like you're talking about your friend Chris, you know, someone crying during a movie. You know, some people might be like, oh, that makes me uncomfortable. I don't like being around you when you're crying like this, because that taps into my own sadness or something
Yeah.
that I can't express. You know,
Or look over and say, "You're crying? What's wrong with you?" Like they may, you know, there
shame
might be
it.
some, yeah, it may shame it potentially. So there's a whole other side to it, because I'm curious. Like I think there's a spectrum of sensitivity here, and you know, what popped into my mind is, well, how is it impacting your life? Like if it's impacting your ability to connect with friends, then we can explore that. But is it the right friends? You know, or maybe they're not comfortable with emotions and feelings, so that kind of comes into it as well.
Definitely.
But
So let's is it possible to manage or even change your level of sensitivity, do you think? Um, Actually, we could ask also, is it advisable? Like, is that even something worth trying to do? But if it is, do you think that's something that is possible for us to do? And if so, how?
I think it's possible for sure. I think I would check in about, like, for this person who wrote in, like, do they feel like they're, too sensitive, or how, like Chris said, how is it impacting their life, or how do they view it? Because that's important too. Is it what, take in what other people are saying, have conversations about it, maybe explore it yourself. And if you feel like you're being impacted in a way that you want to shift things for yourself, okay, then yeah, I think it is possible to make those changes. In short answer, a yes. And I guess I'm curious as to, I think it might be a yes from other people as well. And
Yeah.
maybe we can explore the how, but.
Yeah, and then it came up earlier too. I'm curious about, is there something else going on there? Like if the reaction does not fit the situation, is there something happened that in the past that may need to be explored and processed, right?
Right.
For instance, like when you experience trauma or very challenging situations, it can often manifest itself or show up later on in a range of different feelings and emotions. So be kind of curious about that a little bit. So, does your mind gravitate towards situations, or, there's definitely ways to explore that in a, from a therapeutic perspective.
Sure.
No, I agree that we have to take a look at what the driving force is behind it. If it's some work needs to be done there, or if it's just genuinely that this person has a rich and vivid emotional system. And do they really want to change that? Like, there's ways to regulate. There's always emotional regulation skills, ways to figure that out, how to manage the emotion when it comes up. Do you need to? I guess that's a question for the client though, right? Like,
Yeah.
Why are you changing that because you want to make other people more uncomfortable so that people stop commenting on the sensitivity? Or maybe is there a way to embrace the fact that you have a really rich and vivid emotional system? You're going to be very colorful. You're going to be really vibrant, and maybe that's a good thing.
I agree in context, right? And I don't know all the context of this question, but if I were having brain surgery, I wouldn't want to have a highly emotionally sensitive brain surgeon, who's saying, "What? You handed me the wrong instrument. How dare you? You must hate me." Something like that. I want them to be sensitive to the work. I want them to be sensitive to what they're actually sensing and perceiving, but emotionally reactive at that point, I don't think I would want. I would want someone who's definitely more contained and calm, right?
Yeah. I think I heard a
Right,
while
because
ago
they're
that,
different.
yeah.
What's that?
Go ahead, Vic.
Oh, I was going to say that, but that's just the difference, right? Is it the sensitivity versus the reaction? Like,
Yes.
Or the appropriateness of the situation. Like, that's
yeah, are you
obviously
being
going to be troublesome in the middle of surgery, and you're going to be like, oh, this is something that's not okay, versus that emotion coming out. Yeah, that would be a bit of a red flag.
Yeah, so if you're being emotionally reactive to a situation, what is that about? Versus maybe you're in a place of beauty and it really takes you over and you have a beauty tear. That's being emotionally sensitive. Beauty tears are great, right? Like, just, or whatever that might look like, where you're just kind of overwhelmed by that emotion, but it's very like pure and genuine in the moment, and you just feel it deeply and richly, and that can be lovely given the situation, versus being emotionally reactive, where there's like something's happened and you're reacting to it, versus something is going on and you're observing it within yourself. I think are different.
Yeah.
I experience a beauty tear every time I see that there's a new episode of the Mental Health Bootcamp podcast being downloaded to my iTunes, my Apple podcasts. And that tear comes down and I'm like, oh, what a thing of beauty. I jest.
That's great.
I joke. But that's an excellent point. You're right, Brooke. Yes, you want to be sensitive and receptive to those things that are happening in those moments. That's kind of the spice of life, right?
Yeah. Brooke mentioned the emotional regulation skills. So I had another client who there'd be sometimes in meetings, she would have a bit of an emotional reaction to whatever the topic area was about, and it would frustrate her that, if there was a very moving story about something within the context of her work, she would sometimes get emotional and cry. She didn't want to be perceived a certain way, it was impacting, she felt might be impacting her ability to do her job.
Sure.
So, yeah, we talked about emotional regulation skills, but also encouraged her to do some writing, about the way that she was feeling, and developing a bit of a game plan in those moments when she felt that wave of emotion coming, then try to calm the body and shift the mind in that moment. So that helped her out. We didn't want to decrease it too much because, again, I felt that was so important for her to have that rich spectrum of emotion. And sometimes when you try to numb one emotion, it numbs other ones too, right?
Yes, that's the way I describe it to a lot of clients, that it's hard for us to shut down a single emotion, right?
Yeah,
You can't just say, okay, I'm going to feel all the joy and I'll feel some sadness, but I'm not going to feel fear or anger. It's usually you just dampen them all,
yeah,
and then your range is much more limited at that point, right?
for sure.
Mhm.
There's also like what I don't know a lot about it. I know there's a book out there, I think The Highly Sensitive Person,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
and that's for those, and that I think sheds light on a whole, just more for that. So people who might be like, I just feel overly sensitive, or that could be worth exploring too, because we don't want it to be a negative thing. I think there's normalizing it and finding the strengths in it and seeing it as a strength really in so many ways. If clients talk about sensitivity, I always try to talk about the benefits of that and how they can use that, to their, I think it's wonderful. But if it's causing detriment, then of course there's work to be done. But
For sure. But I like that though. You can harness it, right? You can focus it
yeah,
in so many different
it's a
areas.
superpower.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
maybe
think so
it's
anyways.
the birds of the feather situation, maybe aligning yourself with other people that are maybe similar to you. But I agree. If you want to be a surgeon, maybe it's not the best trait to have at work.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of surgeons actually, there's a reason why they do what they do and don't develop too many connections with their patients for that reason, right? They want to depersonalize the
Sure.
patients a little bit just so they're a little more mechanical in terms of what they're doing. But maybe a teacher or a therapist, or there's so many different fantastic, like if you have good interpersonal skills and again you come across as authentic and genuine with a good range of emotion, then people, they like that, right?
They do, but I can see the distress in it sometimes. And I'm thinking of a client I once had many years ago. And by the way, whenever we talk about clients, the identifying information is always distorted, and we're
Yeah.
never really giving
Mhm.
you anything about any real information about clients. But a client, a facsimile of a client that I had many years ago, who uh, was in a business setting, not a therapy setting or healthcare setting or anything like that, but in a business setting. And they were doing like these coaching sessions and these weekly kind of coaching meetings. And the person was being asked to kind of tell a personal story, talk about your own personal story. And the thing that he found most disturbing was whenever he would talk about himself, he would start to cry. There was a lot of emotion there. And if you'd get positive feedback from people, he would cry, and he felt like I can't. I feel like I have to leave these meetings because it seems so unprofessional for me to be crying in these meetings. But I'm just tapping into something that's really sensitive to me. It just doesn't. He rarely talked about himself. That was the reason why he came to therapy, was he wanted to work through this, because like, why is it that I always cry when I talk about myself? So this was an area where certainly there's something kind of nice about that, but I think it was also a signal that there was some kind of unfinished business going on underneath the surface that we needed to address. And it was
I
just
can,
not helpful for him to be in a business meeting and the only person crying when he's talking about his own story.
I completely agree. Yeah. So it really, I feel like that whole difference of, is there something underneath this or what's going on? Um, Really, I work a lot with emotional sensitivity or emotional dysregulation, people with very rich, vivid emotional systems that are just rich and vivid, and some that have stuff behind them. But
Yeah.
it really actually hit home when I started working more with concussion clients. After clients have had a concussion, they're just genuinely, or the majority of the ones that I have worked with are just very genuinely more emotionally sensitive. The emotion is like right on the surface, and it's just going to be quick, whatever it is. If it's anger, if it's fear, if it's happiness, if it's sadness, tearfulness, and it moves fast. And so I feel like that was really invaluable for me, is to start working in that population. But it was, it was just very, very interesting.
Hmm.
Would
Did
we-
that change as their concussion started to heal and all of that, or were they kind of stuck in that?
It lightened for a lot of them, but they're still like much more sensitive than they were prior to the concussions. Much more. And like, even so, just through storytelling of what they've been through the week, they'll start tearing up, but they'll move through that quickly. It's just very right at the surface. So normalizing that might be part of their life now for these clients.
There was a film in the 90s featuring Harrison Ford, right? Indiana Jones, Han Solo. It was called Regarding Henry. And this is a film about a guy who was a high-powered, driven, kind of narcissistic attorney, I believe he was, who got shot in the head, some sort of altercation. I don't remember all the details. Got shot in the head and had this complete personality transformation, became just this kind of soft, warm person who, I don't recall if he remembered who he was before, but he was just this major transformation in his life, which is kind of funny. Interesting to point that out. And that history goes way back to someone that everyone learns in Psych 101, Phineas Gage.
Phineas,
Yeah.
Phineas Gage, who had a pole that a dynamite blast shot a big, like a 6-foot pole through his skull and took out part of his brain, and it had this major transformation in his personality. But anyway, point being that the brain is incredible.
The brain's incredible. So at what point, so I guess kind of going back to the question that you had asked, like when it comes to the sensitivity for these clients, let's say a concussion client, we're probably going to work on emotional regulation opposed to demonizing the emotion. We're not going to, like, if you're going to have an emotion, that's fine. If it's going to be rich and vivid, that's fine. Let's learn how to regulate the emotion, how to be aware of it, how to accept it, how to bring it back down so you can be regrounded in the moment. You experiencing the emotion isn't a negative thing. We just want to make sure you know what to do with it so it doesn't get in the way of the activity that you're doing, whether it's work or connection or whatnot.
Just to make it practical, Brooke, what would you do to help someone regulate an emotion? What might you...
There's like so many different things to help regulate emotions, right?
Just give me one. Give me a couple.
That's really challenging, like starting with awareness of it. So trying to be in the moment, becoming aware, am I even having an emotion? Like noticing what those red flags are that the emotion starting to climb up the ladder ahead of time. And then once you can do that, you can either like ground yourself in the moment, you could distract yourself in the moment. It depends on the context. If you're at work, you can't really do any processing. So maybe if you're at work or at school, you're going to want to distract yourself. Maybe if you're at home and you have some more time, that might be a better time to process. So whether that's journaling or art or exercise or finding something to improve the moment for you. So maybe through the use of textures or smells, especially if you are sensitive, that might help a lot. Yeah, there's like there's just so many different things. But being okay with it, I think, is the first thing.
That's great. Anyone else have any ideas on things you might do to help kind of soothe, I guess, the emotions or moderate them?
The word that pops into mind, and it's been mentioned almost every week of this podcast, is mindfulness. You're noticing the emotions, the sensations, non-judgmentally with curiosity. But I'd like the phrase calm the body, shift the mind. So deep breathing can help. Brooke mentioned grounding exercises. Sometimes, spending some time outside, depending on the context, or finding 10 things in a room that are blue. or whatever your favorite color is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, but deep breathing helps quite effectively for myself and for a lot of the people I work with.
It's great.
I just have a quick question. Would you say that would highly sensitive be synonymous right now with people saying that someone is overly emotional or you're so emotional? Would you say that's one and the same? Like if someone is crying, you know, when they're talking about something that, you know, most wouldn't think about, would that be seen as sensitivity? Like, or do you think I know I don't want to go too much off that, just go down that route, but I'm just curious.
Of course, I don't know that there's any hard and fast definition for that. But when I think of highly sensitive, I think of someone who's kind of touchy or like, there's, they might read into things a little bit like, okay. But overly emotional, I would think someone who, instead of being a little bit frustrated, they're enraged. Like,
Okay.
I don't know. That's just the way I think about it. Do you guys have a different way of thinking about it?
I get that. I would think in the population that I work with teenagers and young adults and older, but a lot of them seem to be more like younger adults or teens. And I think the vocabulary that would be used, like it would be synonymous of, if you're being referred to as sensitive, that would mean you're being emotionally sensitive. But I don't think as a therapist that is necessarily it. I think that you can be sensitive to other things, so slight changes in your environment, which is what highly sensitive persons is more about, like being very sensitive to the needs of others, slight shifts in your environment, the effects of caffeine, not having enough sleep. So me, myself, I believe I'm a highly sensitive person for sure, because these little shifts will throw me off. And yeah, I'm very, like, just being attuned to the things in the environment and being aware if something changes or if somebody needs something, or being impacted by slight changes in routine or structure, and my whole system will feel off. Yeah, so I think highly sensitive persons, it can be external and internal, but when general populace uses the word sensitive, I assume that they're meaning emotional.
Okay.
Interesting. Brooke, do you think that has anything to do with your touch issue? Like you're not wanting to be hugged? Like it's just too much? Just a little too much,
It might, like literally when I get, I've only had my nails done, I'm like in my mid-late 30s, and I've had my nails done twice in my life, and my back was sweaty because they like push your cuticles and they like massage your arms, and I was like, it was just so uncomfortable.
I love the arm massage.
Oh gosh, it was awful. It was like, it was the equivalent of going to the dentist. Like,
wow,
I was just so uncomfortable, like physically uncomfortable.
That's a whole other type of sensitivity. I think that's like, like there's so many different ways you can go with sensitivity.
Yeah, I got my, I think it's a pedicure, your toes. I got that done one time at a team meeting. It was fantastic. And they did some scrubbing and some trimming. Then they asked me if I want to color, and I said absolutely. And I did the Seahawk colors. It's really nice. Yeah.
Way to go.
Opposite experience than Brooke, apparently.
I will donkey kick people if they touch my feet.
Oh boy.
It's a no-go.
Oh boy. Guys, great job with the topic tonight. A lot of fun to talk about sensitivity. I hope listeners enjoyed some of that as well. We're going to wrap it up for today. Please tell a few people that we exist. We are happy to receive any sort of letters, questions, Dear Abby letters, whatever you'd like. info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com. Like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google, Podbean, or YouTube. Visit us on Facebook or Instagram. And in the spirit of Thanksgiving, we're thankful for our listeners. Thank you, everybody.
Do we have a quick 10 seconds?
Sure.
Thank you to the person in Montana who's been very good, or peoples in Montana who have been listening or watching regularly.
Yes.
Montana.
Yeah, thank you. Beautiful state.
By the way, we're not creeps. We don't have any information other than that we know someone is listening in Montana. So that's about it. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.